joining us on the phones right now, good friend of the program, Scott Braddock, editor, quorumreport.com. Scott, good morning. How are you today?
Doing well, Chad. How are you?
Doing great. There's a lot going on in Texas, a lot happening, and we're glad you could join us to talk about some of this stuff. Over the weekend, retail stores were allowed to reopen, 25% occupancy. Restaurants were allowed to open at 25% occupancy. Some malls were able to open. You would think that everybody would be happy about that, but no. The governor seems to be catching it from all sides on this entire coronavirus issue.
Absolutely. You have Democrats who say he's moving way too quick. You have Republicans who say that he's moving way too slow. He's sort of caught in the middle, which sometimes, Chad, from a public policy standpoint, can be a good place to be. It might be that you're sort of in the Goldilocks position of having it just right. But let's be clear. There's no owner's manual for this deal. And when you look at the way that President Trump has handled it, when you look at the way that governors in other states like New York and California have handled this, and the way that Governor Abbott is handling it, everybody's approaching it a little bit differently, and they're all going to get questions based on the way that they're dealing with it and criticism based on the way that they're dealing with it. You had one congresswoman, for example, from Houston, Sylvia Garcia, say that she thinks that, look, it's going way too fast for the governor to be allowing this kind of commerce to be, recommencing at this point when they still don't have the kind of testing that they need in the Houston and Harris County area. Some would argue the same is true for the entire state. And then, of course, you have not just Tea Party lawmakers, but what I would call some mainstream conservatives in the legislature who have been, sending these letters to Governor Abbott and asking him to open additional businesses, including hair salons and gyms. And I saw that those just some examples. And I saw that you had, I guess, one company in Lubbock, a gym up there protesting, saying they were going to open today when they're not allowed to under what the governor has laid out.
Yeah, well, they kind of backed off of that last night. Yeah, they decided after getting they got a talking to. They got a talking to last night. They decided to not reopen.
The talking tos are happening all over the place. You also saw that in Montgomery County, down in the Houston area, the county judge down there, Mark Keogh, a Republican, a staunch conservative, had said that the governor's order was too vague, and so he was going to allow for the opening of gyms, hair salons, barbershops, and the like. Not only did the governor give him a talking to, apparently, he got a call from the governor's office, but they also had a letter they received from the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, that said, hey, if you have people who are out of compliance, they can be prosecuted, arrested, and dealt with in that fashion if they're not complying with the governor's order. And so the county judge there in Montgomery County, which is not an insignificant county, Chad, 600,000 people live there or so.
Yeah.
That's where the Woodlands is in Conroe. And the county judge backed down and said, okay, we'll keep the thing shut down that the governor said to keep shut down.
Okay, so let me ask you something. Let's go back a few weeks. We were talking about this almost power struggle in determining who had the executive order. The executive order, does the executive order allow local counties and cities to reopen if they wanted to on their own timeline? The former governor, Rick Perry, said absolutely. They have that. The county judges can reopen. He said that here on this show. Yep. You reported that there were a lot of county judges who felt it was kind of on them. Now it seems as though the governor has said and put out basically said it's all on me. These are my decisions.
Yeah.
The local entities now have no say in what can go on. Is that correct?
That seems to be the case. When we talked about it previously, it seemed to be a little more of a gray area, Chad. And the governor is asserting the right to supersede the county judges, which, as far as I can tell, is sort of unprecedented in modern times. The example that Governor Perry gave on your show I thought was a good one. He talked about how he didn't have a right when he was governor back in 2005 to give an order to the county judges in southeast Texas ahead of a hurricane to tell them that they had to evacuate people out of the way. And he's correct. And what the governor had said in his last press conference this past week, and in his executive order. And it's interesting, Chad, you got to not just watch what comes out of his mouth at the press conference, you got to read the order as well. And in the order, I believe it's GA 18, he said that he is suspending the state laws that allow for county judges and mayors to implement measures that would address this disaster. And by doing that, in effect, what he's saying is there is no one else in the state who gets to decide what to do on this other than me. The political consequence, of course, is just what you said, that he's taking all the responsibility on himself as far as whether or not this works. And, give him his due. Look, if everything goes well, and if Texans judge it to be that this recovery and this dealing with this coronavirus, if people think that it went great, then he's golden, right? That he did it right. But if things go south, it's all on him, and it'd be hard for him to blame anybody else.
Isn't that, and just asking you to put on your analyst hat here, isn't that pretty risky in a state that is very diverse? We just had a texter who said maybe different cities with different needs can reopen at different rates. I mean, that was that's kind of what a lot of people had on their minds, that the governor was going to allow different portions of the state to reopen at different times. And it came back that only if your county has 5 or less cases can you go to 50%. I mean, Lubbock is different than Houston. Houston is different than Amarillo. I mean, it seems as though the governor is taking on a very risky move with the, local, small government conservatives out there.
I think so. I think that's fair. And to put a finer point on it, as this virus was first becoming a big issue for us, remember, it was the local officials who were given the say on how to shut things down. It was folks in Austin and Travis County who, made the decision to shut down South by Southwest. It was people in Houston who were given the leaders in Houston who were given the option whether they wanted to shut down Rodeo Houston, and then the sorts of measures that were put in place as far as the mandatory orders to wear masks and the stay-at-home orders. All of that at first was done at the local level, and as we talked about, and as you just mentioned, those different places may have different needs. If they have different rates of of death and infection and hospitalization rates and all of that, their local leadership could look at it and say, we're going to implement a plan that works for this area. But what the governor has done is said that those folks do not have a right to make those sorts of plans. On Saturday, I think you had the Harris County judge down in Houston, Lena Hidalgo, issued another order that was another stay-at-home order, but all she was really doing was backing up the governor, because she wasn't trying to say that certain businesses should have to shut down or open that were any different from what the governor had laid out. She was simply saying that for those businesses that the governor has said need to stay closed, she was just sort of re-emphasizing that for people in Houston, trying to back him up. And so, the governor has taken it all on himself. It is a huge risk, but let's also say this and give the man his due. Governor Abbott is the most popular politician in Texas, not just the most popular Republican, but the most popular politician, bar none. And that means he has the most political capital of any individual in this state. And a lot of folks have talked over the years about what Governor Abbott's legacy might be, and I was thinking this through, Chad. There's hasn't been a whole lot of huge initiatives that this governor has taken on. I don't know what you would point to and say, but man, that is the big legacy thing for him. He tried for a pre-K initiative in his first legislative session. You may know that they have not started even one major transportation project since he became governor in Texas, although one of those projects that may get underway we can talk about. But look, there are no big legacy items for the governor so far. If he's going to spend political capital, he's got plenty of it, and it looks like it may be spent on tackling the coronavirus.
Yeah. Tell us what we know about this federal strike force that's heading to Moore County and different portions of the Panhandle.
Yeah, the mayor of Amarillo, Ginger Nelson, who I believe it was on Saturday night, she had said that there's a strike force headed to her city to deal with this outbreak that they've had in their meat processing facilities, which has been a problem all across the country, Chad. You know that this is why President Trump put that order in place that said that the meat processing facilities everywhere needed to stay open. He was worried about supply chain issues. Mayor Nelson had said that she talked with Governor Abbott over the weekend, and that he had told her that despite the fact that he had lifted his stay-at-home order for the rest of the state, that people in the Amarillo area needed to stay indoors and not be carrying the virus around, and that they have an increase there in Potter and Moore County in that area, and so that the CDC and their strike force going to come in, take a look at trying to figure out exactly what's going on there and why they're seeing the spike that they're seeing. But it is something that has been seen in these other areas around the country that do have large meat processing facilities and operations. So it doesn't seem to be an outlier as far as the rest of the country, but for right now it's a hot spot in Texas.
Okay, so what was reportedly said between the governor and the mayor up in Amarillo, is this a new stay-at-home order, or was this you need to tell folks that they need to stay home rather than getting out?
It was more of the latter.
Okay.
It didn't seem to be any change in any regulation, but they were asking people to stay home there in that area because suddenly they have become a hot spot that has the attention of the federal government.
But now that he has taken away power from the locals...
Yeah, she can't do that.
She
can't
do that.
That's right. She can only encourage people to stay home and to please wear a mask if they do go out. I mean, these policy decisions have, I think what you're getting at, Chad, these policy decisions do have consequences. In that area, she cannot now tailor a specific response policy-wise from the city of Amarillo.
Right, yeah. Okay, another ramification from all this, state sales taxes dropped big in April.
Oh, man, to say they dropped big is an understatement. It'd be, we'll both be understating this. That is the biggest drop in about a decade, Chad, and of course this is the consequence of having the economy shut down all across the state. Suddenly people couldn't go to bars and restaurants. Suddenly people couldn't go to the movie theater or to their favorite retail store and buy what they wanted to buy. And so much of our economy in this state, in this country, is based on, on consumers and people going in and purchasing things. Of course, the economy's shifting with companies like Amazon that do home delivery of stuff, hiring people, and they're still hiring a lot of people in Texas, as I understand it. What will this mean for the state budget? It's hard to get our minds around this just yet, Chad. The comptroller, of course, has said that in July he's going to come out with a new official revenue estimate for the state of Texas, which, to put it in perspective, based on the budget that they passed last year in 2019, lawmakers were expected to come back next January with close to $3 billion in the bank as a surplus. But now we know, based on the comptroller's public comments, and first he had said this privately to lawmakers, that we reported at quorumreport.com first, that he expects them to come back with a deficit. They're going to be in the red when they come back. When he comes out with that new revenue estimate in July, he expects to revise revenues down, to the tune of billions of dollars. And of course, this is the double whammy of not only the coronavirus, but also the price of oil dropping like a rock because of two things, because of the Saudi and Russian price war, coupled with the fact that now nobody's driving anywhere. People aren't, using gas. You can fill up your truck pretty cheap right now, Chad. You just don't have anywhere to go. And we're going to start to see that change a little bit. I saw some reporting this morning that indicated that even in states where they haven't, quote-unquote, opened up their economies, people are starting to get fatigue of having to stay home. The quarantine fatigue is really starting to kick in, and they were looking at tracking data from people's cell phones and saying, you know what, people are starting to get out of the house some more because I think they're just getting bored. But in the places where people have seen their economies at least partially open here, here in Texas and other places, people are starting to travel a little bit more. That'll move the prices of oil up a little bit, but not enough to help in the short term here with the state budget.
Do we know how many, if any, press conferences are scheduled for this week from the governor?
I have not seen any come across my desk just yet, but we'll update folks at quorumreport.com when we do.
Very good. Tell folks what else you're focusing on over at Quorum Report.
want to go even further into exactly what this is going to mean for the state budget, and also taking a look at what it means for businesses around the state that might face legal liability in reopening, whether or not they might get sued if anybody goes to their business and then gets coronavirus. We are looking into the legalities of all that and what the public policy questions are that will face lawmakers on those things. At quorumreport.com, you can always sign up for our free emails there at quorumreport.com. Just click free sign up on the homepage.
And something else, Scott, I don't know if you saw this yet or not. It just came across to me. Carnival Cruise Lines. They're
out of Galveston?
Yeah, they're going to launch on August 1st, and one of the ports that they're opening is Galveston. So that's some economic activity down there, at least for Galveston.
Yeah, and you might have seen pictures from Galveston this weekend. People were on the beach like nothing had happened. Like there were cars along the seawall, and people were on the beach just like none of this crisis had ever been reported. I saw the mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner, had tweeted out either late last night or this morning, was talking about people going down to Galveston, not socially distancing, hanging out on the beach, and then coming back up to Houston. He was concerned about that, and he was reminding people that the virus is very real and there is no vaccine for it.
All right. Scott, thank you very much. Appreciate your time as always.
Talk soon, Chad. Thank you.
All right. That's Scott Braddock, editor, quorumreport.com.